So good morning, everyone. You're on the Marketing Blab. This is the Marketing Blab with Deborah, and I'm Deborah Jason, author of Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget and DeborahJason.com. Thank you for joining us, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. The format of our show is I have a special guest today. We're going to talk for a few minutes, and then I will open up the seats. And if you have a question, you can either type it in the comment box. In the comment box, when you do have a question, do a / and a Q. And that will show up as a question, so it's easier for me to see while I'm busy monitoring the camera and the comments and my guest. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest, Robert Nissenbaum. Robert is joining us from Oregon, right?
Washington, Tacoma.
Right? Officially, we connected through colleagues in Tucson. And then Robert moved further to the West Coast. And so Robert is here today because he has an interesting outlook on the world of social media and on engagement and interaction. And he and I have been connected for some time between Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. So Robert, thanks for joining me today. The first question I want you to share with people, or the answer to the question, is what do you want people to know about you in terms of just your personal life as well as your professional life? Is there something special that people may not know that you'd like to share?
I think the big piece of it for me is that what I do on social media has grown a large portion out of what I've done for my own businesses. So everything I teach, everything I talk about or write about, is all based on my actual experiences, not so much what I've read and simply do. It's something I figured out for myself since as early as 2006. I never liked marketing to begin with. I was always very anti-establishment marketing. If I was told that this is the way you should do it, I usually went the other way. So for me, it's a very much a matter of walking the talk more than anything. And
well, you know, when you and I first talked, you said, you used this phrase, you said you were an anti-marketer, meaning not necessarily that you don't believe in marketing, but that you question the rules.
Oh, did we lose you?
I'm here. You can't hear me?
What if it's a sound on my end that we just lost?
I can hear you. Hold on, we're going to pause the recording. So the question was, you called yourself an anti-marketer, not because you don't believe in marketing, but because you believe in breaking the rules and seeing how that works for you. So why don't you explain that a little bit?
You know, for the first time I remember dealing with it was back in 98, early 99. I had started a previous business in Arizona, retail-based, not a whole lot of money. Looked into doing radio advertising, had a couple of the radio execs come out and talk to me a little bit. And based on my demographic, what shows I should be on, what times I should be on. And they were giving me the number of listeners, et cetera. And the question I asked at that point is, of all these listeners, how many of them are going to actually hear this? And there was no way for them to give me an answer. So I gave up the whole concept of trying to market or run a spot to address a number of people that I had no guarantee of reaching. So I changed it up and do something like 15-second spots, which at the time they were only offering 30 and 60-second spots. How to convince the station manager to even allow me to do that, and simply change them instead of any sort of call to action, just branding, just to get my name in there, what we did, and the web address. Because I couldn't, again, guarantee how many people are going to actually hear the message. They couldn't bill me based on how many people were actually going to hear the message. And rather than spend a whole lot of money and effort into doing something and crafting something that I had no guarantee was going to have any results, I simply went the other way and did something relatively simple. So for me, that's much the way the social media works. We're all told how many people will potentially see our post at any given time. We spend all our effort and time to try and create posts and post them at those specific times to reach the maximum number of people. And then in the end, we have absolutely no control over who does or doesn't see it. And Facebook is almost now taking that a step worse with their algorithm changes. And not only do you have to hit the right number of people at the right time, but they have to decide your message is relevant to your audience, that it is share worthy. So you're up against a complete wall necessarily in trying to craft the post. So I don't look to get people necessarily to see my content. My goal is to get people to my profile, and from there, they'll be able to see my posts. So rather than that, focusing every single message and hoping somebody sees each individual message that they come up. And if I've got 10 posts, that means I'm actually working 10 times to get people to see a piece of content. The content goes out, and then I work to get those people back to my profile, because then at least those pieces of content are visible the same way they would be on a blog.
So your goal, because a lot of people talk about, with social media, even though you may have a lot of fans and followers and connections, you don't own those names. And so we're always talking about getting people not necessarily back to your profile, but to your website, where they can opt in, where they can give you their email, where you can start to build your list and get more subscribers. But you're talking about posting something and then having somebody go back to your Facebook profile or your Twitter profile. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, all your posts automatically show up on your profile. But when you post on your blog and you put up an article, you work to get that article seen, because when it's seen, everybody does see your website. They're on your website reading that article.
Right.
When you post the content to social media, they're not on your profile reading it. They're reading it in their news feed.
Right. That's what I mean.
The best value you get is if they're on your profile, where they have access to what else you've written. They have access to contact information, messaging options. So I rather people, the whole point then is to get from the post back to the profile. In many cases, most people I talk to, if you read something or see something in your profile, in your feed, you don't necessarily click back to find the profile. So it simply runs through and it's done. So to me, it's almost that blog syndication does the same thing. It's a great way to get some additional exposure, but it's a lot harder to drive people back to your content and your overall content and your contact information, which is what lead capture is. So,
well, let's talk about, specifically, because people get confused, I think, when it comes to Facebook. You have a personal profile and you have your fan page. There are two different things. And most people these days, I think, get more engagement and exposure using their personal profiles than they do their fan pages. Right. One way people get more exposure on their fan pages is by Facebook ads, but you've gotten exposure, you say, without spending any money on Facebook ads. So why don't you talk about that a little?
Most of what I do is I'll post. The content will go out based on what I think people want to hear, what I'm being told people are interested in, what I find that might attract some attention. I don't necessarily worry about when it gets posted. If I have the time and can do a little bit of research, great. But if not, most of the time I don't. It simply goes up whenever. The rest of my effort is to drive people either to that post specifically. I can do that by sharing that to my personal profile, by tagging myself in it, depending if it's an image or looking at a link, by posting in communities. And the rest of the effort I spend is really being social, interacting with everybody else on their content. The whole piece here for me is that the more I'm out and about, the more I'm visible, the more help I offer other people, the more likely they are to take notice of who I am and come back to look at my content, in which case those posts become visible again. So rather than hoping somebody sees something I post in a feed, I'm actually working actively to get them back to see those posts. And I know whenever I go to a profile or somebody else's page, I'm usually scrolling back through a few posts. Mm-hmm. So I get to see more than just the last thing posted. And even if that was a week ago, I'm still seeing it, it's still relevant.
Do you know, or do you have some sense, or do you know statistics about, how do I want to ask this, how many people actually do that, as opposed to, just going through their news feed and liking and commenting and sharing? How many people will actually then go back to somebody's fan page and look through their posts?
No, nothing specific, but in all the reading I do and the people I talk to, it's rare. I mean, normally, unless something even in my feed specifically catches my attention or I'm curious about it, I don't. Normally when I go back, it's because a friend of mine will share something from another page. Mm-hmm. And if what they shared has value to me, then I'm going to go check out that page. But if I'm already a fan of the page, unless it's, oh, I haven't seen anything from them in a while, or that was just something phenomenal, I'm curious, I don't normally go back myself. And I think that's just our nature. We run it, we see it in our feed, we're done. And I think even Twitter does the same thing. I think most people end up either back on the profiles because they do see, or the pages because they do see something from somewhere else, or they are coming back specifically to find out who you are.
Yeah.
So for me, you know, the more I interact on another business page, the more I interact on even news pages where they get a lot of activity, and I comment as my business becomes front and center. It's visible. If those comments continue to add value to either the poster or to a commenter, that's when they're likely to want to know who I am, what I'm about. They'll come back and view the profile. And, you know, at least the one thing I like on Twitter is it does give you profile views in terms of its analytics. Mm-hmm. So you have a good sense on a monthly basis how many people are coming back. It's not just tweet impressions that matter to me. Great that you all saw my tweets in the feed. But if you're coming back and looking at my profile, you can scroll back through 4 or 5, a dozen tweets very quickly, and that's not measured necessarily in those impressions. And that's, so for me, I want the profile views, and you get a much bigger picture.
Well, that's true, but I think that's also part of the tricks of the trade. You know, one thing I hear you saying, which is kind of cool, is not just being concerned about your own posts, you know, what you're putting up there, but going and checking out what other people are doing and commenting there and sharing there or liking there, and that builds curiosity. That person that goes, who is this? You know, let me check out what Tactical Social Media has to say, or Robert Nissenbaum has to say. Let me go track him down and go look at his page. Am I following?
And it's funny. Yeah. And it's, you know, LinkedIn is that big psychology piece of it. If you go and look at somebody's profile, unless you're doing it anonymously, which most don't, they know somebody looked at their profile. They know it was you that looked at the profile. Human nature in us will generally go back to see who's looking at our profile. So in a lot of cases, I've had connection requests because I've looked at somebody's profile, didn't necessarily have an interest in connecting with them, but somewhere they commented or something they saw piqued enough of an interest in me to go look and check out their profile and learn a little bit more about them. Same piece on the business profiles and business pages. Just a matter of creating that exposure for you.
True. And actually, when you talk about that, one of the things that comes up is LinkedIn. You know, because I can be in a LinkedIn discussion and then discover that somebody's sending me a request to connect. And the only reason they did is because they saw something I either posted as a discussion or I posted in the discussion. And they want to pursue that on another level, and they send the invitation. But, you know, there's one thing that you said to me. I'm going to read this so I get it right. And we're totally in agreement with this, and I think many people are, is that social media, and actually to me, all marketing, is about relationships. And what you said is we're supposed to be natural and genuine, but that's hard to do if we have to work within boundaries and rules of when to post, where to post, what to post, how to post. So you were saying that personally you never look at when you should post, but what you found is what works well for you. You know, and I think that's an important part, is what works well for you, meaning each of us. You know, and we've got to sort of navigate those waters to find out, well, what does work best for me?
And you know, the goal is not to say that you shouldn't look at them, and it's not to say that they have necessarily no value in your audience, and when you specifically post doesn't matter. It's that we get so tied up in when we have to post and how we're posting to get reach and how we're posting to get engagement that we spend an enormous amount of time and effort on something we have no control over, and it takes us away from the time we have to be social. So for me, I found I can spend 20, 30% of my time writing a piece of content, posting it, not worrying any more about it, and then spending the other 70 or 80% of my time just being social, just interacting with other people on their content, learning, just out there being. It's almost no different than a local networking group.
One of our viewers today, who's Mike Holmes, had a question, and he said,
Hey,
Robert, Robert, what I'm getting from this is that the main thing is actually talking to other people on their pages.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, and for me, all of the relationships I've built, all the visibility I've driven for myself is simply being out there and being helpful. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk was probably the best at doing that. Mm-hmm. That he spent all of his time on other people's profiles, other people's sites, just offering help, free advice, answering questions, not even really posting for himself. And it's suddenly you get such this curiosity, and so many people were so interested in who this person was that when he starts posting and starts putting up his own information, mm-hmm. everybody's clamoring to it. And, you know, he's one of the few that I've seen do that, and it's how he built everything. And playing around with what I've done over the years, the most business I drew back for myself was because I was generally out offering advice and help on other people's content. So, yeah, it's definitely the more you interact elsewhere, the better you are, in my opinion.
Let's talk about, because I think recently I saw somewhere something that you wrote. It talked about engagement versus interaction. And we've got, let's see, Trevor, I think it's Trevor here. Yes, Trevor, who put in the comments, his top 3 tips are engage, engage, and engage. So why don't you touch on that? Because I know you, like I said, I think recently you wrote something about engagement versus interaction, or am I thinking something else?
No, you're right. And there's a fine line in this, in that you want to engage as much as possible, but your goal for the engagement is to drive that interaction. Likes have a certain amount of value. Comments have a certain amount of value. Even when I'm active on somebody else's site, I will try and ask questions. I will try and drive further conversation with somebody. And when somebody does comment on my content, I'm trying to get more out of them. I'm trying to add a reply that continue to build that conversation. It's conversation over time. It's an engagement over time where the relationship starts to develop. If you simply like something, great, I know my content hit its mark, but it's harder to build a relationship with just a piece of engagement. So the more you do engage on other people's content, yes, the more visible you are, which is a good thing over time, more touches, but the relationship requires that actual interaction. And you do that, and I've said that for years, extremely well. And then every time somebody likes a LinkedIn post or likes a Facebook post, you go back and actually thank them for liking the post. That's creating some, not just engagement, but interaction with that person. You're mm-hmm. talking about them specifically. And I think that's...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was and that's an interesting way to look at it, because, you know, I think of engagement as interaction, but I kind of see what you're saying, you know, but to like something is, let's say, the first step of engagement, but then right. is somebody interacting with that and keeping that engagement going.
And, you know, it's interesting. I don't know if Adam is on or not, but I've been back and forth with Adam over at Blue Steel Solutions. They're a Texas web design company, and they go back and forth with Bridget and Carol and a few other friends. And I have received a message from Adam on LinkedIn. We've been going back and forth for several months now, that I caught the attention of his boss, and they, you know, looking to get me on their Brown Bag Business Chat. And one of the reasons why is because all the comments and all the engagement and the interaction with Adam on their content, helping them out. She took a good hard look at what I do and who I am. And it's really not just that I'm liking every one of their posts, but I'm adding value to it. I'm doing something for them, and it made me noticeable.
Well,
so
you bring up a great point, and that is adding value. You know, so I might like, somebody might like something on my LinkedIn profile or on my Facebook, you know, and I say thank you, but, you know, thank you's nice. But if they have a comment and I add value to that, and that's, I think, a lot what happens in LinkedIn discussions, because they are more discussions where you give tips or pointers. And somebody is commenting in here, I think it's Walter, said, it sounds nice to help people and to give them advice, but for years he's known that people really don't like advice. And I don't know if I would agree with that, but everyone has their own take on it. people maybe don't want advice unless they ask for it. It depends probably how you present it.
Yeah, and I mean, I get a lot of people that don't. They want to do it their own way, and so I do understand where that concept comes from. And there are a lot of places I can say the same thing. I don't want anybody's advice. I'll do it my way, and that's just because I'm anti. I don't think it's just adding advice to it. It's usually helping answer a question or provide a solution. Where most of this idea came from me, previous business was cell phones, cell phone repair, and spent a lot of time with the carriers back years ago. Verizon was AT&T. Any of them were really poor about responding to customer comments on their websites and Facebook pages. And back then, you had a section where the feed was broken out or the page was broken out two ways. You could look at just the business's posts, or you can look at posts by others. They were actually fairly prominent at the time. You can still find them now, it's just a little harder. So people would ask questions. They'd be customer service questions, either about phone not working or about a rate plan comment. And I was able to go back into my business, having done this for so long. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile hadn't responded. So I simply let them know what the answer was, or who they had to ask for, or how to ask to get the problem resolved. Nothing more. It wasn't really advice. It's just that extra piece of help. Great for the carrier. One less piece of work. I'm essentially doing that customer service, but it made me very visible. So when, the advice I was giving then, as long as you're not stealing customers per se, so that I wouldn't take somebody from them, I was still doing something of value for me. They remembered who I was, and that grew the business very quickly. And it's the same thing here. It's the more you do and the more value you give, even if it's not directly that you're looking to get anything back from it or take anything from it, it's the visibility piece in the long run that matters. And people do take notice. They will come back to your content. They do read. And for me, that, again, getting them back to my profile, where I have a chance to capture them, where I have a chance to get them to see more of what I'm writing instead of hoping they do catch one piece in their feed, is a big deal. And it also eliminates one other piece for me. I don't have to worry about growing the page. I don't have to worry about the number of likes I'm getting. In Facebook, specifically, the likes indicate how many people will potentially see your content in a feed. If you're simply looking at commenting on other sites, and the best ones I found were news sites, because there's always hundreds of comments on any particular post. And if you comment, everybody above you or below you usually will see it or be notified of it. And the other one would be like the zoo, aquariums. We have the Tacoma Zoo out here, and when the little the clouded snow leopard cubs were born, there were thousands of comments. And I can put in comments as the business, oh, how cute they are, or they're beautiful. People did see who I was. They did see the name from the business. As to whether or not they come back to the profile doesn't matter, but I know I'm reaching a larger amount of people and potentially driving exposure for myself well beyond the number of people that might see in a feed. And if I'm actively doing this, I don't have to worry about how many people could or couldn't see my posts in a feed. I'm not, again, relying on the post. Anything I get out of it becomes the bonus. I'm really spending my time just being active and visible. And it's networking meetings are like the same thing. And I've always equated what you do online should be identical to what you do offline. When I go to a networking event, there's very little talk about me. They may ask a question. I may say something. I'll interject myself into conversations or with a group of people talking about a topic, and I'll get involved in that topic. People, they see you. They know who you are at that point, or at least they have a curiosity to want to know more. And it doesn't come from me talking about myself or what I do. It comes from just being actively engaged with other people.
Well, one of my sayings, and it's not my original one, I don't know who said it originally, but, when you are interested, when you are generally interested in other people, they'll find you interesting. And right. So, it's just having that conversation and finding out about other people. And it's not always, what do you do? It could be lifestyle questions, do you have kids, and where do you like to go with your kids? Do you go to the zoo? Did you see the spotted leopard? It's just building that conversation. And actually,
Well,
Trevor here made an interesting comment. He said, pull instead of push yourself or your message. So, it's tell me something about you and let's engage about you. And then people go, oh, that Robert was really interesting, even though you may not have said anything about yourself.
well, and it's funny because we talk about always putting out business content. There's one of the things as well. I'm always at a loss for content. I never know what to write. We always joke about, Twitter for the longest times. I had this for breakfast. I had this for lunch. This is what I'm doing now. There's a certain point where that has value if you do it right, that you're opening yourself up as a person. You're creating a personality for a profile, and your business, your, common points of interest. And that personal side of it's a great way to do that. If you're out and about and you have a particular hobby and you're putting that in with your business content, you're going to attract attention from people that have those similar interests. And that's relationships grow out of those commonalities and those common bonds. And even if to you as the business owner, they seem fickle, they're actually very real to your audience. Mm-hmm. And those pieces, those bonds come back. And I know we go back a lot, and I know you do on that know, like, and trust piece. And, the second half of that quote, which most people don't catch, is that when all else is equal. So that people buy from those who know, like, and trust when all else is equal. And in my world, I don't know how often all else is equal. And even if you're a captive, and even if you're a captive insurance agent and you can sell the same products and services at the same price as another agent, there is something that will bring me to you over somebody else. Right. And then a lot of times it's how you connect with them.
Well, I think that is it. It's that connection you feel. And I think it is that KLT factor. And that, last week my guest was Bob Berg, and he's the one who says, if everything is, all things being equal, you will do business with those that you know, like, and trust. And I like to say, when I'm speaking, I talk to people about your dentist is retiring, so you don't necessarily, you don't get on Siri and say, Siri, who should I go to for my dentist? You'll turn to a friend or a family member or a business colleague and say, I need a referral. Who do you know, like, and trust as a dentist? So it takes time to build that, though. And what you're saying, I'm one of those people, when Twitter and Facebook and all that started, who said, I don't care what everyone's having for lunch, or dinner. But it does, I think a lot of those posts do get interaction because of what you're saying. People go, oh, I have a colleague who's posting what he cooks for dinner, and he makes some really nice stuff, and tons of people respond, and he gets engagement. But let's go back to getting that engagement and actually converting that into growing your list and getting people to your website. Because I think that's still an important point. And I think somewhere you said that you've gotten a lot of traffic to your website, but it's because of social that helped that happen.
And it's two-sided. One, social in the relationships, and people want to read, and you get back and they're interested in what you have to say and they see it in the first place. It still comes from good content on your website and crafting the post and writing the post in such a way that people want to read more. I have never been a fan of teasers. I know that was a big thing with a lot of people, that, you want to convince them, the clickbaits and sort of things. You want to convince them to read and make them want to go read your post. So you give them teasers and cliffhangers. For the most part, my goal is to write the post in such a way that they don't have to click to read more. Mm-hmm. They want to click and read more because the traffic I'm getting then I know is more likely to convert, and it's less potential effort on my part. Or they're going to read further through, or when they get through, they're going to sign up or fill out a form or contact. So that's one big piece of it. And then the other side for the traffic that derives out of social becomes the SEO side of it. That social shares count a large portion for domain authority and credibility to your site, even if they're not a direct ranking factor. So even if I'm connecting, and we'll talk about connecting with a specific audience, even if I'm not within my own audience, if there's enough interaction as a result of social and getting people to my content, that ultimately helps the SEO down the road. If other people in other parts of the world are sharing it, when my local audience goes to do a search for my content, that international audience, which really doesn't necessarily drive business to me, is helping my local audience find me.
Well, let's. So and yeah, I'm not sure I follow that exactly, but I know you've said that you've never done keyword research for yourself or traditional SEO, but you get organic search results because of your leveraging social. So,
right.
Explain that a little bit more so that people understand that more clearly. If you're not doing SEO or traditional SEO of any kind.
For me, becomes almost common sense, or it became common sense over time, that if you keep writing on something and you have a passion for, over time, if you go back to your content, you'll see keywords there automatically. So I try and write simply based on the topic itself, and I don't pay too much attention to keywords. I may, as I'm coming through and writing an article, see one keyword that becomes the focus for it. Great, wonderful. But after you have 30, 40 articles on your site, I can go back now and pick any set of phrases, and they're probably repeated throughout these number of articles. And that just adds over time keyword density just naturally, as opposed to any specific word I'm trying to write for. So the content itself comes out a little more natural. The social side of it that drives the SEO, and not so much worried about the content, is that if I get my articles out, they're shared to social media. I work to get people back to my profile to see these articles. I have them routinely republished or reposted on social sites, Twitter, so they're always staying current. They're always visible. They're seeing other people share them. That's where all those share counts you see at the bottom become valuable. More comments, more engagement on the blogs themselves. Google starts to see these shares. Google starts to see these comments. And the material showing up in searches as adding authority to the site. So effectively, the big thing Google looks at is the domain authority, is your credibility, is your trust, and social shares go a large part to that. So for me, it's about writing quality content, getting it seen, and from there, it kind of builds on itself. So not doing any keyword research. I know domains, when they start out in terms of domain authority, are at zero, especially with a brand new domain. So when I set up Tactical Social Media, the website was brand new. The domain was brand new. This was in January. Most websites, after years, sit in that 30 to 40 domain authority range, where 100 would be perfect. And I've managed to get it up to about a 21 or 22 where it sits right now in 11 months. So all of that being driven off of social media. My organic search was nothing. It was all driven by social and then direct, which was the branding aspect of it, because in order to get direct traffic, somebody had to bookmark your site. They had to know about it. And now the vast majority of my content is being searched organically. So over time, because the shares are in there, because the backlinks are coming, it's pushing up the domain authority, my posts are being shown more in searches. Well, so it's still leveraging that.
I'm sorry. We have a comment here from, let's see who said it. I'm not sure if it was Trevor or Adventure Glass. I'm looking to see who's Adventure Glass. It's always tricky to navigate all the people that are here today. But the comment was, some people play a numbers game and shout at 1,000 people and 10 might hear, versus talk and nurture 100 people and 10 will hear and share and spread your words to thousands. So
love it.
There, Adventure Glass, by the way, I think that's Beth. So, and she's saying that was Trevor who said that. So thank you for clarifying that, Beth and Trevor. I want to open up the seats because we're at a little over the half-hour mark. If anyone wants to hop on and ask a question or share a comment for Robert, that would be great. But also, Trevor is saying, at the end of the day, online business is nothing more than a numbers game. Would you agree with that?
I I mean, everything is to some degree a numbers game, and you have to reach a certain number of people. And, being out in sales for so many years, you had to reach 100 people and get 80 no's to get your 20 yeses kind of thing. So it's always a numbers game. I try and look at it less about the numbers and more about the relationships over time, because I think if you, again, that comment about nurture the 100 people to get the 10 to share your content. I think if you build those relationships, you can do it with far fewer people and spend less time focusing on getting as many eyes as opposed to getting the right set of eyes. So yeah, there's a number of people to it without question. I just try not to focus on the numbers.
Well, we have our friend Jill here.
Hi.
Hey, Jill.
Hi. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
You too, thank you.
Jumping
I
on
have
board.
a question for Robert.
Yes.
Hi, Robert. Would like to just put a comment too. Is allowing, as been going through the ticker here, people are talking about this quite a bit. Allowing also is really nice to kind of don't push so much and have more fun with it, because ultimately you want to have fun with your work. And how has Google Plus affected SEO and search engine optimization as it started maybe 10 years ago, as it's now developing? What do you think, Robert?
I mean, I think the biggest value for Google Plus for me has been, if I post something, I'm seeing my post show up. If I post something on Google Plus, I am seeing that content show in a search within minutes.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm logged in as myself, but even in incognito in Chrome, those keywords or whatever I put in there show up pretty quickly. And in a lot of cases, my content is showing up well before my website does where the blog post originally appeared. So Google is definitely putting value on its posts when it shows up. So I don't know that it necessarily has pure SEO value other than the plus ones on a site, which Google does look at in terms of that domain authority. The more people that plus one the site, the more credibility it has, so to speak. But I think it's that it shows up in searches much quicker, and at least they're supposed to. So even if it's not my website, I'm still getting my content seen in searches.
Because I think that's really good, because with all of our different platforms that we're all working on and deciding what's our favorite, what we work with best ourselves, and also what we get the best response from. Sometimes, some days, some weeks, I know this is why you do what you do, and Deborah does what you do, and we have so many other people in our circle that are really good helpmates on this. Sometimes you don't actually make it. I've gotten a lot of things already started on Google Plus, ready to go. I've got platforms all set up, but some days I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get to Google today.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and it's funny. I try to hit all of them throughout the week. And it simply depends on the day. And sometimes, and again, for me, and this gets the rules over whether you should be consistent or how consistent with your posting. If I don't have anything, I don't post it. If it's been 3 or 4 days and I suddenly look and go, I haven't posted anything in 3 days, I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not invisible. But just because I have no content doesn't mean I'm not being seen, and I'm purposely engaging more elsewhere to compensate. So you don't lose that visibility piece, which is, I think, where the key to being consistent. People keep seeing.
Yes.
For me, on Twitter is the easiest thing, because I can go back and forth in 2-3 minutes and find something to comment on without even trying. And I can spend an hour on Twitter really without using any time, because every time I've got 2 minutes here or there waiting for something, I can pop on, respond, or say something.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier than Google. And for Google, they become microblogs for me, or building out on something I've done. But the biggest value in Google Plus for me is going to be the communities. I think when you get involved in these communities, they're around a very specific topic, and there tends to be a lot more, not even engagement, there's a lot more interaction. And the last blog post I had, a couple of comments on the blog itself, reasonable reach on Facebook for what I did for it. Very little on the Google Plus when I posted it. If I posted it then and shared it to one of the communities, And we've had, let's see, 36 plus ones, 3 shares, and probably 13, 14 comments within a couple of hours, and some very detailed comments. I mean, long
Excellent.
comments. It's a lot of interaction, but also enough to where developing one of the comments and sets of comments with somebody who I've gone back and forth with in the past. And ultimately, not just did we interact on that piece of content, but he had gone back to my profile. I looked at things on his profile again because of the comments and what we were talking about. There was an interest in finding out more of what they were posting. So we carried this conversation out far further. It wasn't just simply a bit of engagement.
We have a question.
Value.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's fine.
Another question from somebody. Actually, it's from Keegan. I believe you know Keegan Robert online.
Yep.
And Keegan's question is, how do you actually convert connections into customers?
A couple of different ways. One, it's not always converting that particular connection into a customer. In a lot of cases, and I don't look at it just from, I have your ear, but and need to get you as my customer. I have 2 audiences that I focus on. One is small business owners, and the other would be other people within this industry. And part of it is that, again, that SEO side of it. If I post something and it gets a lot of attention completely outside where I am, but it helps the SEO side of it, so when the local customers search, it's kind of a roundabout way to get it. So that's one way I look at it. The other piece in terms of getting conversions on it, it's just a deeper conversation. I'll spend a lot more time working on them, going back and forth, and just that conversation piece. Some of the people that are actually probably listening now are because of conversations that we developed in Twitter chats, or I've met them elsewhere. And then the idea is the more you interact and hear, they go across. But I'm as much looking for their audience and they're connected to it, just trying to get the overall exposure. It's not just focusing on specifically that one person who I'm connected with. Daniel, who's the one I was talking about in Plus, I don't know that hire me to do anything or I can hire him to do anything. But because we go back and forth, there's a good chance somebody in his audience saw what I'm writing and could become a customer later. I just will never know, and vice versa. That's, I guess, part of the numbers game piece. You never know who you're actually reaching.
We had somebody who wanted to jump on board, and I lost them. Here comes somebody, so hold on one second.
Yep.
Trevor. See if we can get Trevor here.
Hello.
Hey, Trevor.
Yeah. Hi.
So
I just wanted to jump in and catch up with some of the comments that are flying sideways up there.
Well, thanks. You've got an accent there. So are you calling us from the UK?
I'm from the UK. I'm in the middle of the UK, a little county called Rutland. It's near Birmingham.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, it's 7 o'clock in the afternoon here, so just catching up.
Well, thank you for jumping on board and joining us here today. Just so you know, Robert's had some tricky stuff going on with his camera, so he can't see you.
I can't see.
Okay.
He can't see anybody. He can only hear us.
Right.
So if you have a question,
I'm really handsome. That's what it is. No, I just want to catch up because I think it's very difficult to have one size fits all. Because looking at the comments, some people are very small businesses and some people are very big businesses. Somebody was saying, someone's had 100,000 customers, and it's a different ball game than if you've got sort of personal one-to-one kind of customers. Yep. And an example, just a couple of weeks ago, I'm flying to a conference in Dublin and I need to get a flight, and I've never flown to Dublin before, so I just put on a Twitter chat hour, should I use Ryanair or Aer Lingus, including those 2 Twitter names in the tweet. Now, those 2 airlines are pretty big, and one of them replied to me and one didn't. So which flight am I going to book?
the one that replied.
Exactly.
Precisely. And they replied and say, we'd love to have you on board. Hope you enjoyed Dublin. That was it. We haven't engaged endlessly. We haven't talked. That was it. The other airline ignored me. So if they can't be bothered to respond to a tweet, that shows they're not bothered and they don't want my customer. And they have probably hundreds of thousands of customers, I guess. So So even if you've got a lot of customers, you still need to engage. When someone tweets you, you still need to engage. And it can be a simple thing of just replying, "We'd love to have you on board," or "Enjoyed that," or something to show you exist. You know,
well, and I've heard many stories like that. You know, stories of people who got bumped from their hotel when they had a reservation, and they started tweeting about it. Next thing you know, the hotel is apologizing and saying, "Oh my God, you know, we're upgrading you to a better room," when 10 minutes before they didn't have a room. So there is power.
Yeah, and that goes to one of the interesting things for me is that more so even than worrying about when to post and what you're posting and how to post, that, you know, in the engagement side of it, you need to be monitoring conversations. You need to know what's going on. And I'm very big on you having a profile on all social media platforms, because you never know where you're going to be mentioned. And at least if you do that and you're not necessarily active there, which you don't have to be, at least you can catch a conversation. And I know a lot of businesses that aren't on Twitter, but if I have a complaint about your business and I'm on Twitter, I'm probably going to mention it on Twitter anyway.
Yeah.
So at least if you're there. But yeah, the social mentioning piece and social monitoring is just huge. And I don't care what size business you are. It's amazing how quickly something can either spiral out of control or go in your favor if you catch it.
Yeah, I think the bit we forget that even if it's a big business, people are still buying from people, and we're all people.
Right.
And we all buy, and you know, we're all buying things, all engaged.
We all want to be heard. You know, we want to be seen and heard or acknowledged, you know, like with those props in the lower right-hand corner of our picture. But, you know, we all want to be heard and acknowledged. And it doesn't mean that what we're saying is right or wrong. You know, everybody has their own opinions, but at least as we were talking about earlier, interact and engage. I personally, when it comes to things like politics, I don't post on social media. But a lot of people, you know, have raging conversations that way. But for customer service, I think there's a lot of value for that when people are paying attention and listening.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, though, you mentioned the controversial topics, Deborah, and there's a certain point where if you can manage them properly, they're great for getting exposure and visibility. It's just a matter of be real careful about how you actually approach them. I've actually had a few local customers go off on the gay marriage issue and post a few things, not about their opinions or anything else, just offering a special now. And for as much as they got on the negative side, they got far more on the positive side. So it can go both ways. It's just a matter of how you measure it. And that's, again, that piece about everybody says to avoid all the controversial topics. It's still, like I said, one size doesn't fit all, Trevor. You know, you've got to know who you are and what your business can handle and what you can handle personally.
Precisely.
Well, we have a comment here from Keegan who said he's found success by being more opinionated, but he still does his best to be respectful.
And that's probably ideal. And I think for two reasons. One, because for everybody you do potentially alienate, you get a much stronger bond with the people that agree with you. And I think the other piece to that is you're being genuine. You're being who you are.
Yeah.
And from a social media management side, the thing that always bugged me is if I'm doing all your posting and I'm doing all your engagement, when you come into the business, there's a different personality between what was expressed online and your store or your business. So who they're actually working with. So I think it's really important, and it's great in terms of being opinionated because it's who you are and it's who they see in real life.
Yeah. And who knows, there's other opinionated people that may resonate with that opinion. So, you know, there'll be a like-minded club of opinionated people, isn't there? So it is being yourself. You
want to find like-minded people, you know, and so I think, Robert, you and I don't know if we did have this conversation on the phone, talking about when people opt out, for example, of your email list, or they unfriend you, or, you know, they stop following you. For me, it used to be I'd get all upset and take it personally. But then I go, okay, you know what? I guess there isn't that connection there. So I'm happy for you to move on because you want to be surrounded by people that you connect with and that are like-minded. Doesn't mean you can't have a difference of opinion, but you want to be with people that want to be around you. And
again, that's where.
Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, not to cut you off. That's again where the numbers game that came up is, and then, finding 100 people and nurture it. I'd rather talk to 100 people than spend the time talking to 1,000, knowing that I'm likely only to get 10. I'm doing less work. I'm trying to please fewer people. I can be more of who I am. And even though I might reach fewer, I've got a better opportunity to convert them than trying to please everybody and be very middle of the road.
Well,
I like Keegan's.
It's been said now a couple of times. I'm pointing both ways because you never know which way it looks. But we're talking about just being who you are. We said that early on, Robert, talking about being natural and being genuine and I write about it in my book, being true to yourself, so that, there's a saying out there about you never have to worry about, I forget how it goes, but something about, if you're just true, you don't have to worry about lying because you don't have to remember what story did I make up to tell somebody. Just be who you are and you'll always be okay. And again, not everyone agrees with you, and that's okay.
That's it. And I think some people are afraid to be themselves, aren't they? They're afraid to put themselves out there and say, this is me, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And they sort of hide behind the social media profile and and they want to create a profile that's not themselves for some reason. But
and I have a very dear friend who for many years kind of held back on being true to himself. And all of a sudden one day he stopped and decided it's time for me to come out of the closet, so to speak. It had nothing to do with sexuality. It had to do with his personality. He was kooky and crazy. And now he has tons of people who love him because he's just being who he is, which is that kooky, crazy kind of guy. And people who like that resonate with it. And the rest, he's like, sorry, this is who I am. You don't have to apologize for being yourself.
And again, it's that piece that people bond with. That's where the connections form.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had years ago, I used to have a 9-to-5 job and I was in purchasing and I needed some help from a marketing company. And I was talking to a girl recently that makes a profile out that she's big, corporate, massive, got teams of people working for her. And actually, she's by herself in a 1-bedroom flat. But she's creating this illusion that she's this big marketing agency that can take on the world. And I said to her, when I had my job, there was times I wanted that one person running their business because they were dynamic, quick, get things done. They're not bogged down by departments and meetings and, all that big process that corporates probably gets slowed down by, And I said, if I'd have seen you, I wouldn't have dealt with you. I wanted to deal with that one person working in their own office by themselves. And that's actually you, but it's not what you're putting out, so it's being brave to be yourself, and that's the message you've got to get out there, and that's the honesty comes through, that's the trust that builds up. I've been a lot involved in e-commerce, and e-commerce taught me trust is by far the biggest thing. If you can get trust, customers will buy.
Well,
and it
go ahead, Robert.
Go ahead, Deborah. All right, and it backfires at the same point because if you were looking for a larger agency because of the capabilities they have, and you end hiring her and they're suddenly not there, the loss of credibility in that case is probably far worse than potential business you didn't get because of what you were specifically looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
and it is the good old thing. Word of mouth. Word of mouth is by far your biggest marketing campaign, isn't it? And it's okay. Technology's changed that somewhat in the last few years, and we now have a world we can share our word and our mouth.
But social media is word of mouth in a lot of ways. I mean, some people call it earned media, but word of mouth. I talk about it in my book. Just a little shameless self-promotion. Word of mouth is the most cost-effective advertising that there is, and we have in the comments section again, Tim saying, people buy things from people they know, like, and trust. We've talked about that earlier. And when that happens, then that word of mouth goes along with it because you say, oh, you need help with social media? Talk to Robert. You need help with your marketing? Talk to Deborah. People start to know you, like you, trust you. And then the pay you part comes because the word of mouth helps you gain leverage and build credibility.
And it's funny I go back, I said 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, whatever it is. I remember my mom would get on when she needed something, would get on the phone and call all her friends. It's no longer, that's not the word of mouth anymore. You now get on social media and you post a comment because you can get everybody at once. It's this big party line. So like you're looking for flights on which airline to choose, it's exactly what happens. You go and ask for a piece of advice and 1,000 people come out, and depending on who tells you and what your relationship is to them is how much trust or credibility you put into that decision you make or what they're telling you.
Precisely. And I just wanted to jump back to the SEO thing I was listening to, because I've spent a life in web design and SEO and all that kind of thing. I think it's a dying art now. There are so many other ways and channels that are growing data. Just look at Blab, Periscope, this lot, that so many people still say to me, I want to be number one on Google, do my SEO. I'm saying, hang on, it's part of the equation, but don't sit there and think you'll do your SEO and suddenly be top of Google, because there's so many other ways people can connect with people.
Well, you could do a Google search for somebody, and many times the first entries on the results page will be a LinkedIn profile, a Facebook profile, a YouTube profile. So it's not, as much as we want to get people to our websites, and build our list, social helps people find out about who you are. And I think that's a lot of what Robert's been talking about.
Yeah. And, it's funny. And I don't hear a lot of people that do web design or SEO even acknowledge the fact that SEO and that little art form is to some degree dying. I think it's still critical. And I think it's site design. It's imperative that it's there to start.
Yeah, definitely. Well
but
said.
The rest of it is, and even specific keywords, me trying to rank for a specific keyword in social media is never going to happen. And me trying to write articles to leverage specific keywords over time is just going to make my ability to write hampered as opposed to just write. And again, if you just write naturally because you're talking about a topic, those keywords are there.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is it's the social sharing. It's those external signals that help push trust, push authority in what is shown. So it's use the social to get to it. But no, I haven't heard anybody else, or don't remember too many times where somebody in the business says it's not as critical as you think. So I appreciate that.
Well,
I'm just brave and forward thinking, I think.
No, but that's just it. I mean, I've always been, you're paying $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a month for SEO. It's like, I get it, but if you just started doing, isn't it going to be there on its own anyway? So
precisely. Well, that's what I've always said. Every time I build a website, SEO is part of the build. I don't build it and think I better add that on afterwards. It's part of the deal. But I'm in a classic case. Believe it or not, I had my hair cut last week, and I know Robert can't see this, but I haven't got a great deal of hair.
Robert, you can't see that he doesn't have much hair.
It was new. We changed hair. Got a new hairdresser that came round, and she said, introduction. What do you do? I said, I do a bit of web design, a bit of social media, and that sort of stuff, And she says, I'm on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page lately. And I said, how's it going? She said, it's really good. I put up clients, latest trends, hair things. I said, it works for you then. She says, well, I did wonder about getting a website. How much is a website? And it's the old, how long's a piece of string, isn't it? And I said, you don't need a website. You're a single person doing this job by yourself. You've only so many hours a day you can cut hair. And unless you want to get into employing more hairdressers and you're happy doing what you're doing, if you're busy enough with your Facebook page getting you your clients, why have a website? It's another digital mechanism you're going to have to look, maintain, look about, sort out, do it. Have it on Facebook. That's keeping you busy. That's running your lifestyle. Sorted. You're done. Tick. And I didn't sell her a website. And that was her. She was happy on that platform. She can do it herself. And it's great. So again, one size doesn't fit all.
Well, that's true. And we have a comment here from someone that said, and this is from Peaches. She said she used Instagram to gain all her customers. She's never cared about SEO. So whatever works for you, and I think Robert said that right, in the very beginning is, you've got to find what works for you. So, and we've got Mike Holmes who's got to run. He's saying, this has been great. And yes, you can watch the replay later, Mike. And we are coming up on the hour.
Thanks,
so unless anyone else has any questions, or thank you so much, Trevor, for jumping on board from the UK. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
Robert, you can watch the replay and then you'll be able to see who Trevor is.
Yep.
But Robert, do you have any,
do
you have any last points that you want to make, Robert, before we sign off?
Yeah, the last thing is interesting in terms of post times and everything else. And Instagram came up. I generally don't, again, put much faith into when I post. It's there. It's all right. I'll post it. So I posted what I do on Instagram. I think at most I've had like 26 points of engagement, likes, comments. I posted an article or an image to one of my blog posts at 10 o'clock Sunday night. Probably the worst time you could be by any set of standards. And within 3 minutes, I had 93 likes on the post. So huge from an engagement standpoint, but even in chasing numbers, all that engagement was Middle East, Australia, some of it obviously in the UK because of the time differences.
Yeah.
Not my local customer. But it has value still. And then again, from the SEO side, it's still more social signals that track back to the site or shares. It's still visibility for your name and your brand. You never know who you're connected to. So just even oddball times still have some value.
Well, thank you all again for being here. Thank you for sharing that, Robert. You know, basically, I think, you know, the message is, one, be genuine and authentic, be true to yourself, do what works best for you. You know, if you want to follow some rules, you know what, you can test it and see what happens when you follow the rules versus not follow the rules, and see what works best for you. But thanks everybody for joining us here today. We are going to sign off and stop the recording. Thank you, Trevor, for being here. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Deborah.
Again,
Thanks.
this is the Marketing Blab with Deborah. There won't be a Blab next week since we're coming on the holidays. So I'll be back after the new year. I'm lining up some speakers right now. Thank you, Robert. Before we sign off, tell people how they can find you.
Website, easiest, it's tacticalsocialmedia.org. If you simply look up Tactical Social Media on Facebook, Google+, I'm there. On Twitter, it's going to be under my name. It's just R. Nissenbaum, easiest way to find me. And if you just do a search for my name, I'll come up all the social profiles.
Awesome. So everyone check out Robert again. I put it in the comments section, tacticalsocialmedia.org, or search for him on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. That's where he and I engage quite a bit of the time. Again, thank you all for being here, for taking time out of your busy day to join us on the Marketing Blab with Deborah. I'm wishing you all a happy, happy holiday. And here's to your sweet success. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye.